We're going to wait just a couple more minutes. We are expecting a large volume of folks here to get things before we get things started. So we just wait just a couple more minutes. We'll give the final 1 minute countdown here before we get going. How about that? All right. Let's go ahead and get started. And as people come in, they'll join us. And we'll go ahead and get this webinar started here for everybody. Thank you. Welcome to this webinar on Renew. And Renew stands for Rehabilitation for Empowerment, Natural Supports, Education, and Work. My name is Mark Alfaro. I'm a regional PBIS coach and trainer for the Placer County Office of Education, and I'm going to be your host today. I'm also joined by Kim Wood, who is also with the Placer County Office of Education, who will be presenting a little bit later on some outcomes from a case study. Kim will introduce herself a little bit more fully shortly on. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. First, it looks like everybody's already muted, so we're in a good place. In a moment, once I get really moving, I'm probably going to turn off the video on myself, just because from what I've been told anyway, that it just makes it easier, and then that way it doesn't block any of the content and doesn't mess with my internet as well. So we'll get that started. We'll get that in just a minute. If you'd like to ask questions through chat, Kim is answering some of those questions. We'll also have an opportunity to answer questions after the presentation. We've built in some time for that as well. Okay, I'll also give you my contact information along with how you can get more information directly from the Renew folks in New Hampshire, and this is where the National Center is in New Hampshire. The webinar is also being recorded, and it'll be available, I believe, on the CPC webpage, but just let me know and we'll make sure we get that over to you. Okay. All right, as we get going, before we really get moving, I want to give a special shout out and a big thank you to Joanne Malloy, who's the Renew Director in New Hampshire, Kathy Franker, and Heidi Cloter, whom are instrumental in the development, the training, and the implementation of Renew. Okay, I'm going to turn my camera off at this point here. Let me see here. Where can I do that? There it is. All right. Hopefully you can still hear me. All right. By the way, I already told you, if you'd like to get a if you'd like to get a PDF copy of this presentation, the same thing, just email me, let me know, and I can get that to you afterwards. Again, my contact information will be there for you as well. All right. Our agenda. Today, we will take a look at Renew. Where does the intervention fit within your school initiatives? Is there a need for Renew? And how will it benefit not only your students, but the community as well? We'll be taking a look at what Renew is, what are the elements that make it work, how it's done in essence is what we're looking at. We'll be looking at the history of Renew, including key outcomes. Understanding what the goals are of this intervention will also help guide how Renew fits within your current practices as well. The principles that guide Renew are key to successful implementation. And what does it take to successfully implement Renew? What do you need to put together and have in place for successful outcomes with Renew? At the end, we'll take some questions and reflect on the information presented. As we move forward, I want you to consider the following questions. What do I hope to learn? Maybe that question is, does Renew fit within my school or agency environment? What did I learn? What will I do with what I learned? Of course, my hope is that you'll take this information, digest it, ask more questions, and consider implementation as well. Now, Renew is a youth-directed planning and support process designed to meet the needs of young people with emotional and behavioral challenges, transitioning from school to adult life. I know we can all think of students who fit this profile. Do you have any students who come to school hungry, homeless, subjected to domestic violence, have substance abuse problems, mental illness? Renew was created for youth with emotional and behavioral disabilities who are often disengaged from family and school and their communities. These youth often have low rates of employment and job stability, limited access to mental health services, and limited positive social supports. As schools, we often become the de facto mental health provider for a very vulnerable population. Dr. Mark Wiest from the University of South Carolina and co-founder of SMILE, School Mental Health International Exchange, noted that, one, there are far more socio-emotional and mental health problems in school than physical health needs. He also stated that only 13% of students needing mental health services receive any kind of services at all. Just look at these statistics. 70% of youth in our juvenile justice systems have a mental health concern. Very few are identified, and yet 37% of youth with mental health concerns drop out of school. Suicide is the third leading cause of death among the youth. Dr. Wiest also noted that the suicide rate has been doubling and tripling over the last couple of years. So this is an area of concern for us. What do youth need that have emotional, behavioral disabilities? Well, we need to meet the needs of the whole child. You may have heard the saying, you must Maslow before you can bloom, but now more than ever, these youth need positive adult and peer relationships. They need high expectations and to feel challenged by meaningful, relevant activities. Important also for youth at this age is to have a voice in their own planning, not just to be dictated to. Another critical element of successful programs for the youth is the inclusion of families as natural supports. How does Renew work? Well, we're going to go over the elements that make Renew such a powerful intervention. Renew helps our youth prepare towards college and career readiness. Well, these are critical features of the Renew process. Student-focused planning is at the heart of Renew. This ensures that youth voice is front and center throughout the phases of Renew, from mapping to constructing unique teams that will help put resources in place as they work towards their goals. Student development includes all forms of communication skills. Think self-advocacy, problem solving, planning, and organization. These are what we consider to be the soft skills that they'll need in their careers. There's a high focus of career-related activities which bring awareness and experience in jobs matched to their stated interest. Interagency collaboration. Student-centered teams are created and utilized to assist the youth in reaching their goals. These teams may include people from multiple agencies, schools, and organizations that share resources and assist in the planning process. Family involvement. Natural supports are immensely vital, and Renew stresses the importance of family participation where and when appropriate throughout the process. Program structures. There must be structures put in place that support and prioritize school to career transitions. As trainers and coaches of Renew, we're going to put in structures to help support and ensure high fidelity in Renew implementation. Renew embodies the system of care values. Note that youth and family voice are always in the center of our work. Renew pulls in the best from education, the disability field, and mental health. In education, it's emphasis on college and career readiness. Disability and the work done on goal setting, problem solving, and help seeking. And in mental health, with its emphasis on collaboration. If you're familiar with wraparound services, Renew utilizes many of its core values, being strength-based, youth-centered, team-based, culturally competent, community-based, having family voice and choice, and being individualized. The Renew theory of change highlights the rationale of how the model improves the outcomes of youth and risk, starting with context. Not every youth may qualify for Renew, so it's important that we have in place selection criteria. Facilitators are those that will lead the work with the youth. They will be trained in providing graphic facilitation in futures planning, and we'll get into that, what that means shortly, team development and facilitation, and in accessing resources and career and school development. The process will lead to short-term improvements in capacity and opportunity, engagement and self-efficacy. The process will put in place natural and formal supports for the youth as well. The big goal, of course, is long-term improvement in all these areas. Let's dig a little deeper into Renew and give you some background. Where and when did Renew begin? What is the purpose and goals of this intervention? And what are the basic principles that guide the work? The Renew model was developed in 1996 in New Hampshire at the Institute of Disability and Keene State College as part of a federally funded demonstration project. It received input from agencies such as NAMI, the State Division of Behavioral Health, Manchester Mental Health, Child Family Service Agencies, and many others. Eventually, it developed into a high school tertiary level intervention recognized by PBIS. Presently, it is being successfully implemented in 13 states, many on the East Coast and the Midwest. And of course, we now have started implementation here in California. Renew can also be found in Denmark, of all places. Renew goals line up with the college and career readiness goals that we're tasked with. While the youth will drive their own goals, they naturally include high school completion, a pathway to post-high school employment, potentially post-secondary education, which may include community college, a four-year college or university, or vocational or technical training. Another powerful goal of Renew is the establishment of meaningful relationships within their communities. Renew is driven by 5 principles. The first being self-determination, which we've defined as choice-making, problem-solving, planning, self-knowledge, and help-seeking. It's also driven by unconditional care. It is critical that our youth know that they will not be abandoned when they make mistakes. Allowing the youth to work at their own pace, towards their own goals, their own expectations, and within their own capabilities. It's definitely strength-based, there's a focus on the development of their assets in order to build self-efficacy. Flexible resources. We're always looking for supports that are designed according to what the youth needs, not to what is easily and readily available. And of course, natural supports. The youth should be supported in the community of their choice. The Renew process has 4 phases. The first being engagement and futures planning. This is the primary tool used to engage the youth. Futures planning is designed to help create meaningful, personalized, and individualized goals. Facilitators use graphic facilitation techniques to capture the vision and goals of the youth. Team development involves bringing together key individuals to the table for the sole purpose of helping the youth reach their goals. Family members are always invited. Counselors, teachers, administrators, mental health providers, and community members may also be invited. Implementation and monitoring. Based on team meetings, an action plan will be created for each of the youth. The team will continue to meet and monitor progress towards the action steps, objectives, and long-term goals. Data are typically discussed, such as attendance, grades, unit completion, and progress towards occupational goals. And finally, transition. When the data shows significant progress, meetings are reduced, they're less frequent, contact with the youth is reduced as well, and this doesn't need to be required as much, and supports become less intensive. All right, the work of the facilitators runs around what we call futures mappings. There are 9 futures maps that facilitators and youth complete together. These maps and visual representations of conversations captured on flip chart paper. The youth are asked open-ended questions on history and story, understanding where the youth comes from, family dynamics, etc., is highly valuable. And before you ask, of course, we always advise the youth that we are mandated reporters and all that implies. Who I am today, where does the youth see or visualize their place in the world? Strengths and accomplishments. Oftentimes, this is a hard map for the students to come up with because they don't believe they have strengths. This map can drive many of the goals and objectives that are being defined later on. The people map. Who are the people in their map who can provide supports and reaching their goals? What works and what doesn't work? This chart has the youth reflect on what helps them succeed in the classroom and at work. Their dreams. Now think, if there were no obstacles, what would you like to have happen in your life? Think of a job, think of family, houses, automobiles, that kind of thing. We ask them to dream big. Fears, concerns, and barriers. What does the youth perceive get in the way of achieving their goals? And we ask them, what are their goals? Short-term goals, long-term goals. We think, of course, graduation, but also think things like maybe a driver's license, a job. And then finally, next steps. Based on their goals, start building that action plan and working together and building a team to achieve those goals. Next, I would like to introduce Kim Wood, who, along with her many duties at Placer County Office of Education, is a Renew facilitator and coach. Kim will be presenting a case study. All right, Kim, if you'd like, introduce yourself, and the mic is yours.
Great. Hi guys, happy Friday. As Mark said, I am a board certified behavior analyst, and I'm the PBIS coach and Renew facilitator for our student services department at PCOE. And so one of the sites that we decided last year to trial Renew is our community school site. And that's for youth who are expelled or probation referred, or sometimes put there by choice by their parents. And so a lot of, as you can imagine, a lot of our students do come to us with higher social, emotional, behavioral needs. So that's the context that this case example was implemented in. So go ahead and move that slide for me, Mark. One of the students that we chose is actually at that time, a year or so ago, was probably on the very top of our radar of students that we were the most concerned about. They had been involved in a lot of extremely risky behaviors, incarceration, probation involved, lots of seriously concerning situations. And so we asked the student if they would be interested. We explained the process to them and the program to them and asked if they would be interested, and they were definitely very interested in it. So big picture, this student really had some powerful dreams about, I want to graduate early, I want to get rich and famous as a YouTube star, or social media influencer, things along those lines. But really, at this point in time, through engaging with the student, they had realized that they needed to make some significant changes in their life, and they were very motivated to do that, to the extent that they wanted to move away with their family, had plans to move away with the family and kind of start over, get a fresh start, but really wanted to utilize the supports that were available to them through our program and get that started there. So, and going through the entire futures planning process and mapping process and saying, okay, here's all my, my big term dreams, and helping that student break it down to, okay, what are the first steps you want to get to those dreams? Their first step that they identified on their own was to get off probation, because obviously when you're on probation, your world is so small, your choices are so small, and that impacts their ability to, broaden their social sphere and get jobs and employment and all of that. So that the student identified that the first thing they needed to do, the only barrier that they had to getting off probation, was getting a clean drug test. This is something that the student had just struggled with, had not been able to do. And so they said, yes, I want to use this group and this program to help wrap around me so that I can achieve this goal first. So go ahead, Mark, next slide, please. So this gives an example, this chart here gives an example of the team that was selected by the student. And so a part of Renew, it's so much of it is their voice and their choice. So they get to say, all right, who do I have at my disposal that could help me with this goal? And this outlines a little bit of how each role supported the student in different ways. So you can see the list there is really varied. They chose the school psychologist. They selected a specific teacher at our community school that they felt they had a really good connection with, and that they wanted to have be there for them. We have one special ed instructional assistant at our site, and this person, you know, the student selected this person, and this person ended up being a huge part of the Renew process and team meetings and action planning. Me as the behavior specialist, the student asked that their probation officer participate as well, because they really felt that they had a supportive relationship with their PO. And then our school nurse also participated. And that's an example that the student didn't even know the school nurse, but when they were outlining what some of their obstacles and goals were, we suggested, hey, you know, we have this other resource that might be able to help give you some ideas. How would you feel about inviting the school nurse? And they said, sure, of course. One thing that's unique about this situation is that the guardian was not selected as a member of this student's team. And it's common that the guardian or parent is part of the student's team it's common that the guardian is part of a student's Renew team. But in this case, the family dynamics and everything were such that that was not a choice of the student. And we agreed to, you know, go forward without that, where we're still keeping in contact with the guardian and, you know, looping them in and everything, but they're not part of the planning process here. And part of that might be because of some of the sensitive nature of some of what was discussed by the student in the meetings. But you can see here in this chart, you know, everybody kind of served different roles of how they supported the student every time that we came together and everything. So we'll break down some of the more examples of that on the next slide. So there's a lot of different ways that teams can come together to come up with ideas to help the student reach the goal. One strategy that our team decided to use is everybody goes around, and when we say, okay, what's the first goal here? It's to be able to get a clean drug test. We're gonna go around, set a timer for 10 minutes, and everybody is just gonna go in a circle and keep listing ideas. It doesn't even matter if they're good, bad, or otherwise. The goal is to get at least a list of 30 ideas that then the student is going to look at and say, which ones I like. And so again, Renew isn't a program where we're gonna say, you need to do this, and if only you did this, blah, blah, blah. We say, here's all of our ideas, what fits with you. So that was one of the activities that we did when we all got together as a team. And if you pursue, I'm gonna back up a little bit, if you pursue Renew and get more information about it, you'll know there's a whole team building process where team meeting norms are set and all of that. And so we've gone through all that, got to the idea part. And so after we had generated the ideas, these are some examples of what the students said, I really want to do these things. And they were very open to all sorts of ideas that we really did not have, we didn't know, are they going to like that or not? But that's one of the things that's been really eye-opening and surprising to me about Renew is don't make any assumption about what a student is or isn't going to grasp onto as a support. So some of the things here, for example, the student agreed to come every day to school and self-report and track on a little calendar with stickers whether or not they had used marijuana the day before, and to increase the frequency of their testing. And we set up a behavior contract that if you gradually decrease your marijuana use every week, you can earn an incentive. So just real outside of the box thinking of using tools that we use commonly, but really curating it for this situation. I mentioned that the instructional assistant became a real big part of this team. They were suggesting things like ASMR videos, the ones where it's like weird noises or things that you can watch. The student had identified, the student had said, well, one of the reasons that I smoke marijuana so much is that I have anxiety and I can't sleep at night. And so that instructional assistant said, well, I can show you some ASMR videos and let's look up some guided meditations together and I can teach you how to crochet, things along those lines. And the student was super open to all of that. And actually a year later is still doing some of those things like crocheting and things that you wouldn't necessarily think that teenagers are doing these days, but they are. We figured out a way to keep a group text thread over the winter holidays to make sure that the student was still able to connect with the team. We don't want it to be a thing where, okay, there's no school for 2 weeks. Now, we'll just see you in 2 weeks, so really thinking about how can we, maintain that connection and that level of support. So a lot of different activities that were looked at too, like, okay, how can we look at driver's ed classes and funding for that even. The students said that they really wanted to pursue the tattoo removal program provided by probation because they had some identifying tattoos that were links to certain criminal activities and things like that. And so just, you can see from this list all sorts of activities that we came up with after generating those ideas. The students said, yeah, I'm going to try it. And then we just kept meeting to check in and say, okay, so-and-so said they were going to do this. Did it happen? How's it going? You said you're going to do this. So there's that accountability and continuously circling back to. So, okay, next slide. Mark's got control. Okay, there we go. So I looked at just some of the information across some of the data points that we monitor over time and wanted to share some of that with you. So at the beginning of the student's high school career, they had a 0-point GPA and before they came to us. And then came to us and it had improved to 1.9 GPA. But you can see after we started it, and this is comparing 2 quarters at a time. After they started it, it jumped up to 3.44. So we were, again, there were no goals at all associated with GPA. You know, one of their goals was to graduate early. And so they had, you know, just started to become motivated to catch up on credits and do better. But this was a really nice kind of byproduct that was correlated with starting Renew. The next one that we saw was the number of credits earned per quarter. So again, the first 2 quarters of their high school career, they earned zero credits. Came to us and the first 2 quarters with us, they had earned an average of 12 credits a quarter. And then that jumped up to an average of 17.5 per time period. So again, nice correlation of academic improvement that really wasn't even tied into a lot of the action plans that we were doing at the time. And then the last little bit of data summary I wanted to share with you that was really nice related to the student's goal was they really wanted a clean drug test. That was their first goal. We've worked on more since, but that went from using marijuana 100% of the days a week when we started to by the week 4 of the plan dropping down to basically 1 day a week. So not quite there yet with that zero, you know, looking for 0%, but still a real significant reduction, especially noting that this particular student still has a high level of instability in their home life and, you know, a high level of trauma that they're still kind of working with and all of that. So that's really it as far as just kind of the summary that I wanted to share with you about one particular student, and obviously we'll be able to answer some questions later on, or you can throw something in the chat. So based off of that, Mark, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and send it on back to you.
All right. Thank you so much. Those are awesome results. One of the things that I always find fascinating, and it's just think about this student could have easily said, no, hey, I'm no longer using cannabis, but she was so trusting of her group that she was able to say, yeah, I'm down to 1. You know, she was very open with their group, so working towards her goal. So it's very exciting to see the positive things that are happening. All right, thank you so much, Kim. All right, we're going to take a look at Renew implementation. What does that look like? I can't stress enough how vital having the proper implementation process and team is to Renew. So as we get into it, we're going to talk a little bit about all this good stuff here. All right, so implementation science by Fixon and Blaze tells us that implementation is not a single event, but a continuum of improvement and learning. So let's take a look at this first slide, this first section. Here's where we're at now. We're at the exploration point. Does it fit our needs and capacity? So I always say, hey, if you know the hexagon tool, consider using the hexagon tool. I think that's a great way to do for your decision making, okay? Getting it right. Hey, setting up the proper infrastructure can make all the difference in the world whether or not Renew is successful. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what that looks like, okay? And then at the end, getting that full implementation. Once you've got it there, it's not, you know, we don't just want to get there and leave it there. It's going to require continued evaluation because we'd like to expand the capacity of our people. We'd like to expand the capacity of the program, first within your school, then within your district, and then obviously within your regions. So this stresses the importance of having an implementation team and the right people on the team and how critical that can be. So there's a lot of work that has to be done prior to implementation, but here at Renew, we're ready to assist you on every step of the way. So who do we need on that implementation team? Obviously, we need an administrator. We need someone who can allocate resources and is a decision maker. Would love to have someone with behavior and mental health expertise. Someone with knowledge of internal and external resources is really good as well. And someone with Renew knowledge, and we'll help prepare your folks with that as well. How is Renew implemented? There's a big cycle here we're going to take a look at. First of all, you form this Renew team that we just talked about. It's responsible for staff selection, system development, monitoring the intervention. Then we have the facilitators, and that's where I come in, and Kim and I will be coming in. We'll be training your facilitators. They attend the training, and the training is a total of 3 days. But after the first couple of days, they actually begin working with the youth. They begin facilitating at this point. Next is coaching, and coaching is a critical element in Renew success. I will work with your teams to help problem solve any issues that come up as well, okay? And work with them and make sure that the fidelity of the program is being done as well. As facilitators become fluent, we may identify those that may receive additional training to become internal coaches. This expands your capacity. And as you're doing that, well, maybe we look at those internal coaches to be trained as actual coaches to, like I said, increase your capacity of your staff, increase the capacity of your districts. And then maybe some of those will become trainers, like what we're doing right now, and receive additional training to maximize the capacity in the entire organization, which is really a great place to be. So within Renew, we have a lot of tools that we use within Renew, okay? The Renew Integrity tool is a tool that helps maintain fidelity within the Renew process. It helps assure success. What it does as a coach, I would work with your facilitators, helping them to be successful. The RIT, as we call it, is a great coaching tool because what it does is it identifies areas that I can help support. So it's not so much like a report card, but it's a, hey, here's what I'm good at, here's what I need help with. Data is continually gathered and monitored. So reflection tools are a powerful way of doing this as well. So you saw some of the data that Kim gathered. There was GPA. You can of course, we want to gather that. But think of attendance. Think of all these other areas that we want to see how things are improving as well. But the reflection tools help us also as coaches identify potential opportunities for professional development. Maybe there's some things that we need to work on as a team that I will be more than happy to help you out with. In addition, get to that part right here, we have the Renew implementation checklist. And this checklist is actually, as we're implementing, we work with you to check that, check all the boxes. Do we have everything in place to make sure this is successful? But it's also important to do that checklist, and we would support you with it, show you how to do it, help you out with the checklist continually. So on an annual basis, let's go back to the checklist, make sure we have everything in process, make sure that we're going to be successful in this program. So we've also created, Renew has some communication channels that allows information to cascade from the national level in New Hampshire to the facilitators on the ground floor. Feedback makes its way back up to ensure that all the necessary supports are being provided to facilitators. It also helps make sure that there's best practices. So sometimes there's something that your Renew facilitators on the ground floor come up with, and it loops over to the coach, and the coach brings it to the implementation teams. It goes to the national levels, and it gets put back in because it's such a great tool. So there's many tools in Renew that have happened that way. All right, so research has shown that coaching is a critical element in the success of any intervention. Implementation and sustainability increases tremendously when there's coaching involved. Renew provides ongoing coaching opportunities. So once your facilitators are trained, that doesn't mean that we're done training. We continue ongoing coaching, and that goes on for quite some time. It not only does it help maintain the fidelity of practice, but it also helps practitioners attain fluency. So we as coaches become problem solvers for your facilitators and for the teams. Let's talk a little bit about lessons learned in our implementation of Renew. So I've emphasized the importance of a strong implementation team with strong administrative support. We've seen the difference that makes. Of the cohorts that we've had one that didn't have the strong administrative support and one that really did. So being able to have the infrastructure, the time and space available, that comes from a strong administrative and implementation team. Think of things just like having a place to do the meetings with these youth. The facilitation and the mapping we do on those big flip charts, and we actually put the flip charts up and keep them up during the process. And if there's 9 of them, we need to be able to have place and room for all of the folks doing the facilitation. Okay. To the infrastructure, time, the location, all these things that are really, really important. Capacity created. What we don't want is just another program put into a system, adding something to somebody else's plate. We need to be able to have, if we're going to add something to somebody's plate, they need to have the time and the availability and maybe take something off their plate, because this is what dictates success within Renew. Let's take a quick look at some research. I'm going to kind of just highlight a little bit. I'm not going to read every bit of research on this table, but what I want you to understand is this, is that Renew has a strong research base. It is over 10 published works citing the positive impacts in school and community settings. It's been identified as an effective Tier 3 intervention within PBIS, and it's an effective transition planning process for youth with emotional and behavioral challenges and disabilities. There we go. So what I want you to do is look at the substantial increases in high school completion. Okay, so this is after a couple of years of Renew implementation. On average, Renew participants demonstrated rates of high school completion of over 75%. So we're talking about the highest level of students that usually drop out of school. Now that graduation rate that our research has shown has gone up to over 75%. 50%, there's a 50% gain in employment, and over 40% went on to post-secondary education and training programs. Powerful. Now what this shows us is the power of sustainability and why we need to have all these things in place, why we need to have the strong leadership team, why we need to have the strong coaching. As sustainability, there's sustainability, you'll see increased positive gains. Well, think about it. Our facilitators are gaining fluency and they're getting better and better at it. But just look, even the first year, the goals are met. They started out, the youth with teams, 44% growth in gains in overall their overall scholastic measures. So the CAFAS, which is the Child and Adolescent Functional Assessment Scale, what you'll notice here is it's going down, and that's a positive. So in the CAFAS, a decreased score means improved youth functioning. Here's a subscale. Again, what we're looking for is for the numbers to go down. We want the scale to go down, which shows improved functioning. Again, look at the different areas: home, school, moods, self-harm, drugs, alcohol, all showing improvement. And who wouldn't want to see, let me see here. Oh, wait, and we got credits earned. Look at the tremendous difference in credits earned. I think that's such a powerful thing. One of my favorite ones is this one right here. Discipline referrals. Who wouldn't want to see a decrease in discipline referrals? Now, here's the interesting thing about this particular school that you're seeing this case example of right here. This is after their first cohort. So this is after their first cohort. The difference, they've been in for 5 semesters, but it's the first cohort started out. You saw them 10 referrals all the way down to less than 1. All right, I want you to just take a minute to read this as we're getting ready to wrap things up. So this is Anthony Haley. Anthony Haley is a Renew graduate who was struggling. So the reason he was in the program was he was at risk of failing out, dropping out of school, of not having the credits. He was high risk. He is now a Marine Corps sergeant, a husband, a homeowner, a church volunteer, and what we would definitely call a Renew success. So what we're going to do now, that was the main part of the presentation. What I'd like to do now is take you and see if there's any questions that Kim wants to pull up here that we can ask in general. And as we do that, as she's taking a look at those, I want you to invite you to a couple of different things. And you might want to take a look at this. We've got the Renew web page. You can, if you want, by the way, if you Google Renew New Hampshire, because if you do just Renew, a lot of other things come in. But if you Google Renew New Hampshire, you can find the Renew page. A lot of great resources, a lot more information as well. Also, there's this wonderful documentary called Who Cares About Kelsey, which we were able to see before our training. And it shows the way that Kelsey, one young lady, went from starting the program almost on the way out of school all the way through to finishing school because of the Renew program. There is a new, if you'd like, on May 7th, they're doing a little reunion online, and you can join into that reunion and you can see what Kelsey's doing these days. I would invite you, you have to register to be part of it. I think they're limiting it to the first 700. Last I heard, there were almost 500 people already on it, but it is going to be recorded. So I'm actually not able to be part of it because I've got some training I'm doing, but I am definitely going to look up that recording. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, right as we get questions, I'm going to flip to this page right here. This is me right here, my contact information. There's my email address. And feel free definitely to email me with any questions or concerns after this as well. I do want to warn you that if you look at my email, it's M.A. Alfaro. If you do M. Alfaro, the guy over in the business office gets really upset with me. So make sure that you're doing M.A. Alfaro. And I'll put my video back up here because we are done with the presentation. You can see who I am. Kim, did we have some questions in there that we can answer?
There was just a question about whether the program helps students who are on the autism spectrum. And my response was that I believe there is a lot of research that person-centered planning, such as Renew, can be effective for students that are on the spectrum. Do you have other info to chime in about that, Mark?
No, I totally agree with you, and especially because the meeting portion of Renew is really, really based upon the school-based wraparound. So you bring in a lot of the different, you would bring in specific to what the child needs. So if the student is on the autism spectrum, then you would bring in the resources that that particular student would need as well. Okay.
Great. Another question about how Renew integrates with special ed services. And that's actually something that since we've started launching it in our program, several of the students do have IEPs. And for students that, several of the students who are participating in Renew do have IEPs. And for students who have existing IEP goals that relate to some of the activities and goal setting and, whether it's harm reduction or, meeting kind of social, emotional, behavioral goals, and if they have social, emotional, behavioral, individualized services, those things can overlap. So it doesn't always overlap. So we might have a student with an IEP whose goals don't necessarily relate to what they're working on in Renew. But for example, the student that I talked about does have an IEP with social emotional goals that align with decision making, so on and so forth. They do have individualized services, counseling services through their IEP. And so some of the individualized counseling service minutes are actually met through the school psychologist doing the Renew program.
Yep, that's correct. Jim, you're more of a special ed specialist than I am, for sure.
I've been doing this for 100 years. So.
There you go. There you go. Absolutely. Great answer. Great answer.
Great. Let me see what else here. There was, a question, a comment about staff buy-in. And I think some of that, I can kind of chime in about that and say, you do have to choose when you're doing the preparation work about, okay, what systems do we have in place? Do we have an intervention team in place? You know, do we have all the data that we can mine to select students, so on and so forth? When you're selecting your Renew facilitators, you definitely need to make sure that they have buy-in and they have the time and all of that. This isn't a voluntold situation.
Definitely.
That might be a crash and burn situation.
And one thing I also, certainly you're going to have your facilitators, if you have some facilitators who are working on it. And once they get working on it, I mean, that part's not a big, that part works its way out. If you're talking, I'm wondering also if maybe you're thinking of staff buy-in like as a whole, the whole school as a whole. What's really fascinating to me about Renew is that because you're building individual teams, we actually ask the students if they have a teacher that they would like on their team. The student goes to the teacher and asks them to be on the team. So that to me is so powerful that I can't imagine, that a teacher, one, is they're saying, hey, I have these goals. I think you can help me out with this goal. I haven't seen anybody turn that down yet. And because it's also student driven, I've been in some meetings where the student is the one leading the meetings, they're driving the goals, that it just increase the staff buy-in becomes more and more prevalent, and it's easier to get.
Right. There's a question about where they'll be able to get the link to this video of this presentation, Mark, so that it could be shared with other team members.
If they can email me at malfaro@placercoe.org. Anybody can email me that, and I will get that. I will get some information out to you for sure right away.
Okay. I think there were some questions about getting PBIS buy-in as well, which is a whole other webinar. So,
Definitely.
But I think, some of the resources that Mark was discussing, like watching the Who Cares About Kelsey video and all of that, there's some really good resources on the Renew website too to share with people that might actually be a little bit of a tipping point too.
And you may look up, there's some videos, everybody, there's some videos on that Renew website. There's the Renew website right there, renew.unh.edu. And if you just go in their search bar and type in these words, youth voices, and they've got videos like of the young man in the video or in the slide that we just showed, but they have a lot of other youth, and they talk about their journey. Where were they before Renew? What was the Renew process like, and what became of them? They all are successful. They've gone through the graduation, and what are they doing now? So again, youth voices on that website will give you some additional videos that you'll be able to show to some of your staff members.
A question, does this apply to children K through 5? It's generally identified for high school, potentially through middle school.
We talk a lot about it is 8th grade and up. We'd love to catch them in 8th grade. It'd be great if we could link it from that middle school and catch them before they fall in their freshman year, because we know how hard that freshman year can be. And so we're actually I'm working with high schools here. We've talked a little bit about trying to capture some of our middle schools. We're still working on that around this area. But generally, Renew is for 8th grade and above.
That being said, when I put on my board certified behavior analyst hat, whatever age student that you're working with, incorporating some elements of person-centered planning would be fantastic. But this
Absolutely.
package, you know, and all of the steps that go with Renew might not be the best match for K-5.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions?
Okay, I don't think I see anything else. There was a question about what tier Renew is, and we talked in chat about it being tier 3 because it's
a tertiary. Yes, it's a tertiary for sure. Yeah, definitely it's a tertiary level, tier 3, because we are developing our teams around the individual, around the youth. So it's not where we're going to go out and blast it out to a lot of people. So it is definitely tier 3. All right. I want to thank everybody for showing up. And again, feel free to email me. I'd love to hear from you if you have any comments or questions. And certainly if you want some additional resources that I may be able to provide for you, be sure to get that out to me. And I'll, again, thank you so much for spending your Friday afternoon with us.
I'm just going to see if, thank you. I'm just going to see if there's any other questions here.
All good?
Yeah, it looks like everyone's just saying thanks. No other questions.
Awesome.
I think everyone's just signing off.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Have a great weekend.
Bye now.
Okay. Bye, Mark.